you very much, gentlemen. Again, coming back to Tel Aviv Airport and what's going on over there at this particular time. Eric Kulisch joins us again. Technology is great, especially when it works, Eric, but hopefully at this point, right now, obviously, what can you tell us about what's going in and what's coming out of, if anything, right now out of Israel?
Right. The airport in Tel Aviv, good morning, Bill. The airport in Tel Aviv is the main airport in Israel. It's open for business. They have a long history there of dealing with trying to operate like normal and when there's missiles and other warlike conditions. But now we've got an actual full-blown war with against Hamas in Gaza, and so it's a very dicey situation. Tel Aviv is less than 40 miles, let's say, from the front lines of that. So, the airport's open. A lot of carriers, I'd say the vast majority of carriers, international passenger airlines, but also a lot of cargo airlines have suspended flights indefinitely until they can get a better handle on the risk situation there. But a lot of the Israeli passenger carriers like El Al and some other ones are going in there. But yesterday we wrote about and as we've talked about here before, even UPS and FedEx aren't flying in their purple and brown tails. They've suspended, and they're still serving Israel, but mostly we suspect through commercial third parties, either putting packages on passenger airlines or some other cargo airlines. So there's not that many going in there, but we picked up word and did a little connecting of the dots yesterday about a small startup airline out of Florida called Global Crossing Airlines. They just started commercial operations as a charter operator 2 years ago, flying passenger planes. And then early this year, or in the summer, they got their first 2 Airbus A321 converted freighters. These are standard body size planes. And they said they were flying 2 of their aircraft to Israel with about 50 tons of relief supplies, medical supplies, first responder gear, and so forth. And turns out we tracked them on some flight tracking sites. They're pretty much going the northern route through stopping in New Hampshire, then Reykjavik, Iceland, Frankfurt, and finally going down to Israel. So that's interesting that they're going in there in such a conflict zone. Especially that since they don't have these, traditional long haul type of freighters.
And Eric, certainly with what's going on in the region, what can we expect for types of commodities flying into the area? I can only imagine a lot of relief supplies and things like that.
Yeah, I guess there'll be more types of relief supplies, first aid, and so forth to sustain any people who are dislocated from their homes because of the war, that are, kind of internal refugees temporarily in Israel, or maybe to provide relief supplies to anybody who evacuates out of Gaza, but also just, kind of in preparation for a long war. And then just normal, food and other commodities, because Israel wants to try and keep its economy going as much as normal, because that's important.
So, Eric, as you look at the situation, you've also mentioned to us another interesting story about Kida Air, I believe. What are they doing? And obviously, this is a little bit interesting and extreme at times.
Yeah, so, when I was trying to check on, which cargo airlines are still operating there, we know DHL is going there. I found out Silkway West out of Azerbaijan, MNG Airlines out of Turkey, and a couple others, Lufthansa Cargo, are still flying some of their freighters in there. And I up popped Kida Air, which is a large cargo airline out of Michigan, and they fly 747s and a few 777s. And lo and behold, there showed up one of their 777s on the ground in Tel Aviv. But it was kind of a little bit of a head fake. They're really not flying cargo in there. That plane is a brand new, let me rephrase that. It's a brand new used plane, a passenger plane that's being converted by Israel Aerospace Industries. It's being converted for the first time ever, a 777 into a full-time cargo plane. It's got the cargo door cut out and all the other modifications that are made to the fuselage. And, that plane still needs to get its a supplemental type certificate for modifying the original design of a plane. And so it still needs to do flight testing, and that plane was flown back into Tel Aviv to do a second round of flight testing so that they can get their certification from Israel and hopefully the US FAA by the end of the year. So I thought that was interesting, flying in to do some more test flying in what's technically a kind of a conflict zone.
Definitely there as well. One of the, obviously, some prognosticators are saying that that this war, unfortunately, may look to spread beyond Israel's borders into more of a regional conflict. If that does indeed happen, do you see air cargo not only avoiding perhaps Israel, but even that area of the Middle East as a whole?
It kind of depends. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think anyone's going to fly right near the border zone, but, there could be eruptions in other states. I mean, Lebanon's not a real big cargo destination. Amman, Jordan, I'm guessing, gets a fair amount of cargo, but you can probably fly. It'll probably change the routings for sure of these aircraft, as we noted in our story. Even in coming into Tel Aviv, the Civil Aviation Authority's changing the way the planes come in. They're taking more of a northerly route rather than flying straight in from the west into Tel Aviv. So change the routings to kind of to make things a little safer. And of course, in Israel, they're taking a lot of other measures as well.
And speaking of those measures, are there any kind of, I would say, policies or new practices now with civilian aircrafts maybe looking to leave the country or fly into the country potentially?
Well, I'm not really sure about that, but just to pick up on that theme about safety or avoidance, the Israeli aviation authorities have a really interesting system. They're flying kind of these commercial aircraft, are navigating them through a conflict zone where, Israel's a very small country, maybe the size of New Jersey, and they've got all these fighter planes in the air. They got missiles coming in. They've got their Iron Dome anti-missile defense system, and you got to navigate around that. So the air traffic controllers work closely with the military air traffic controllers, and they also know when the Iron Dome is going to fire, and they are able to also maneuver airplanes if they pick up a missile launch, enemy missile launch, and if there's a threat, they say they have like 90 seconds or more to kind of move the plane a little bit. And so they say there's not that much risk. They know how to handle it, but it's definitely a tense situation.
Definitely there as well. You only got 90 seconds to move a plane. You better be on your game there as well. You also had reports of United announcing their earnings for the quarter there. What can you tell us about them, and especially how do they compare up with Delta and others in the same kind of in the same boat?
Yeah, United Airlines third quarter earnings are really good for the company as a whole. Revenue of $14.5 billion set a record. They were very profitable. But their cargo business, which is a tiny fraction of the overall business, that went down substantially, about a third from a year ago. That's what we pretty much expected. It's tracking pretty much what they've done for the whole year, the first two quarters. And it was pretty much on track with what Delta last week reported, 36% down on cargo revenue. United does a little better overall in absolute dollars because they just have a bigger cargo network, fly more big planes, so they're always ahead of Delta on absolute dollars. $330 million to about $250 million, I think, for the quarter. So, but it just goes hand in hand with what we're seeing in the overall market, that it's been down for 18 months. Now it's bottomed out, and it's, kind of just bumping along the bottom.
And Eric, with this expectation of maybe a bottoming out, are you really expecting to see that there's going to be a slow rise up in terms of overall air cargo activity, or maybe that activity can be a little bit more faster?
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of seasonality, for this so-called peak season, which really isn't a peak. It's a mini peak, if that. But there's still some seasonality. Things are a little better than August and through September and into October. So, from that standpoint, it's a slightly optimistic. But if you look more broadly, or some of the clouds on the horizon, or versus last year, which is a terrible peak season, it's basically flat to zero growth.
Eric, thanks so much for joining us this morning and breaking down this top story of the day and giving us a little bit more insights into quarterly earnings. We'll be sure to check in with you as this develops.
My pleasure, Anthony. See you.